It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as a former UFC champion is set to make his AEW in-ring debut. We look at who the surprise entrant was in last night's casino ladder match, and AJ Lee is set to make a return to wrestling. All that and more coming up in today's video, but first... Last week, a report from Cassidy Haynes of Bodyslam.net detailed changes backstage in AEW, specifically regarding the loss of creative input from AEW EVPs Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and the Young Bucks. AEW President Tony Khan would speak to Mike Johnson of PW Insider this week to clarify a few things. Whilst Khan didn't deny the changes, he did confirm that they in fact took place at the end of 2019, and said, "Yeah, I saw those reports this week and I thought that was pretty disingenuous stuff from some of the internet wrestling writers because nothing has changed in recent months, and really, the structure changed for me at the end of 2019 and it was because of me. I felt like I needed to take over and be more accountable as the CEO and the booker. I was the final say, but there was probably too many different people with input on segments, and this show wasn't as organised at the end of 2019 as I thought it could be." Khan then revealed that it was his 2020 New Year's resolution to be more hands-on and said, "I had said my New Year's resolution myself was that I was going to be very organised, or I told myself if there's something I didn't feel good about, I wasn't going to do it, and that I was going to create much more of the work product myself. I've been doing it for over a year and a half with the collaboration and help of a lot of great people, including the people I started with. I think the difference has been, instead of 5 people getting in a room and putting a format together, I get in a room and put a format together." Whilst the timing of the report was a little off, with similar reports surfacing earlier this year, to be fair to Cassidy, who reported the news, he did detail the new roles of the EVPs within the company, which I believe was new information. If you want to hear exactly what the report said, you can do so by clicking the card in the top right corner. Before we discuss what happened on last night's episode of AEW Dynamite, let's discuss what happened after the show went off air. With AEW taking Dynamite to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the home of ECW, the crowd were presented with 4 ECW alumni. AEW President Tony Khan would bring out Taz, Chris Jericho, Dean Malenko, and Jerry Lynn, all of which who were part of ECW during the 90s at the height of the promotion's popularity. Taz would then call AEW ECW on steroids, before stating that AEW is the best place he's ever worked. CM Punk would then join them in the ring, who was of course ECW champion during the WWE reboot of the brand, and he would joke that he feels left out after not being invited. Now let's get to what actually happened on the show, as CM Punk took to the microphone to confirm his next match in AEW. Punk would address the Philadelphia crowd, highlighting his history in the city, where he lived and worked for a number of years early on in his career. He'd then issue a challenge to rising star Daniel Garcia, who crossed the straight edge star during the build to his match with Darby Allin at All Out. AEW President Tony Khan would then take to Twitter to confirm the matchup. The match would be taped after last night's live episode of Dynamite, and I won't be giving any spoilers here, but it will air on Friday's episode of Rampage. Hikaru Shida last night battled Serena Deeb in an attempt to win her 50th match in AEW, which would have earned her an award which was at ringside during the match. Deeb, in her first match since July, would spoil the party as she forced Shida to tap out with a Serenity Lock. After the match, Serena would then lay out the former AEW Women's World Champion with the glass trophy, seemingly sparking her first feud back in the promotion. This return follows a knee injury that kept her out of action for a number of months, an absence during which she declared her full focus was now on climbing to the top of the AEW Women's division, seemingly confirming her departure from the NWA, where she worked as part of the company's mutual trade agreement. Last night, former Ring of Honor television champion Bobby Fish would make his AEW debut. He would unsuccessfully challenge Sammy Guevara for the TNT Championship after being caught by a GTH for the 1-2-3. After the match, AEW would take to their official Twitter account to post a Bobby Fish is All Elite graphic, which confirms speculation that he's officially signed with the company on a full-time deal. Rumours of this began to spread after Fish was spotted wearing his own official AEW merchandise in the match graphic for his match with Guevara, although some felt he was simply appearing through a trade with MLW. However, no official deal was ever announced between Fish and Major League Wrestling, only that he would appear in their Opera Cup. Bobby's first round match actually airs tonight on Vice, with that having been taped earlier this week. Elsewhere on last night's episode of Dynamite, a brand new AEW Championship was revealed, which will act as a secondary title in the women's division. With AEW Dynamite set to move to the TBS network in January, All Elite Wrestling revealed a brand new AEW TBS Championship, with the belt being presented by senior official Aubrey Edwards. The belt is almost identical to the men's TNT Championship equivalent, with a TBS logo being present, of course, instead of a TNT one. Tony Schiavone, who made the announcement, also revealed that the inaugural champion will be decided via an elimination tournament, which will begin in January. Thunder Rosa, Jade Cargill, Sky Blue, and Ruby Soho all took part in promos to confirm that they would be participating. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you drop a like on the video as it helps me out a lot, and make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head, hopefully, towards 100,000 subscribers. But now, let's press play on the video. And speaking of announcements, during the show last night, the in-ring debut of a former UFC Heavyweight Champion was revealed, and it will take place next week in Miami, Florida. Following the aforementioned TNT Championship match, Sammy Guevara would be attacked by American Top Team members Scorpio Sky, Paige Van Zandt, Junior Dos Santos, and the rest of their gang led by Dan Lambert. This would lead to an attempted save by Fuego del Sol before Chris Jericho and Jake Hager of the Inner Circle would rush to clear the ring. Lambert would then lay out a challenge to the Inner Circle for next week in Miami, with Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and Jake Hager set to take on the Men of the Year Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page alongside Junior Dos Santos. Not only that, but the UFC BMF champion Jorge Masvidal will join them at ringside. The former UFC champ Dos Santos was released from the UFC in March following 4 losses in a row and is currently not signed to an MMA promotion, which explains why he is able to compete. Masvidal, who will join them at ringside, is still signed with the UFC, which means he likely wouldn't be allowed to work a match, which explains his limited role. Despite this, he did get physical with Chris Jericho, laying him out with a trademark running knee at Grand Slam just weeks ago. Last night's Dynamite anniversary show was main evented by the Casino ladder match, with the winner receiving a shot at AEW World Champion Kenny Omega somewhere down the line. The match featured Jon Moxley, Pac, Andrade El Idolo, Lance Archer, Orange Cassidy, and Matt Hardy, with one final mystery entrant. As many predicted, this would lead to the return of Hangman Adam Page, who hasn't been seen in the ring since the 28th of July, where he lost his title shot at Omega in a 10-man tag. Page would enter the ladder match last, eventually walking away with the poker chip that was hanging above the ring. He will now get a future title match against longtime foe Kenny Omega, a match that was reportedly originally planned for AEW All Out last month. Plans would change, with Page going on hiatus to spend time with his pregnant wife as she prepared to give birth to their first child. But not only this, but the debut match of CM Punk and the arrival of Bryan Danielson likely played a part in the decision to delay the match, as to not overshadow Hangman's expected title win. Whilst the date is not known, we could see Omega vs Page take place at the Full Gear pay-per-view, which will take place on the 13th of November, so just over a month away, and this show is actually named after the Hangman, and an ongoing being the Elite gag at the time. But do you think Hangman will come out on top when he finally gets his hands on his former tag partner? Let me know in the comments down below. And finally, AJ Lee is set to make her long-awaited return to the wrestling business following her retirement in 2015. At last night's Women of Wrestling press conference, the relaunch of the company was announced, with the now AJ Mendez being positioned in 2 key roles. She will serve as executive producer, whilst also providing color commentary on each broadcast. WOW, which is owned by LA Lakers owner Jeannie Buss and created by David McLean, also announced a multi-year distribution deal with Viacom CBS, with new episodes to start airing in the fall of next year. Viacom CBS confirmed that they will be distributing the series in the United States and internationally. CBS is responsible for the running of huge networks such as MTV, Nickelodeon, Showtime, Comedy Central, and many more, and they also own the Bellator MMA promotion. As reported by Fightful earlier this week, the promotion's marquee signing was also revealed to be Tessa Blanchard, who was released from Impact Wrestling last year, being stripped of her Impact World title in the process. It seems that WoW are going all in, with two of the biggest names in women's wrestling being front and center of their relaunch, with current WoW champion The Beast also continuing on with the company going forward. And before you go, make sure you check out my video where I rank every single AEW champion from worst to best, including the TNT, Women's, Tag Team and World Championship.